Welcome back to another episode of The Crossroads. We are pumped to be back and excited for another episode. We had a great conversation for episode 2 with Tom, so if you haven't checked it out, if you're watching, go back on YouTube, check it out, or wherever you're listening to this, go back and listen to that amazing conversation with Tom. So shout out to Tom, and excited for the future guests we'll have as well.
Yeah. He set the bar high.
He
set
did.
The bar high, you know. Tom, he's a good dude.
And he holds the bar pretty hard. You know, he's pretty strong.
Swole,
we didn't talk about that. I'm kind of mad when we look back.
But if you watch the video, I mean,
those veins are popping out.
It's funny because after we stopped recording, we said something. We were kind of talking about like the things that he looks for when he goes to like a hotel because he travels a lot for work.
For
that was I think that was after the episode.
Yeah.
And he had said like I look for like a gym, like he needs to have a gym.
Right.
And I said for me, I usually make sure that it has like free breakfast, which is why he looks like he looks and why I look like how I look.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so it was kind of like one of those things where it's like your priority,
I
guess, dictates some things about you. So maybe I need to change
your decisions.
I need to start looking for gyms at
maybe
hotels.
look for one that has breakfast.
Because I won't stay if there's no free breakfast.
Look, my thing,
breakfast in a gym, man.
When I go on any of those travel websites, looking for a hotel,
Intercontinental.
first thing I need, free breakfast.
Yes.
Yeah. Second thing I need, free parking. If you don't have either one of those two things,
wow,
I'm
man, if
looking
you're staying somewhere without free parking, man, that's serious business.
That's
right
serious
there.
business.
It's like Spirit
It's like
Hotel.
the Spirit Hotel.
It's like, oh, by the way, you got to pay for your sheets.
Oh man.
So yeah, that soap you gotta pay for that too.
Yeah.
I have a public service announcement too, man. Like I became that guy. Like I always used to look at people if I see them walking around with their pillows. I used to look at them like, okay, like what is it like? Is it like your whoopee?
Extra.
You know what I mean? Like your little thing.
Yeah.
But I got this new pillow that's been helping my neck out. I'm not gonna say the name right now because they're not sponsoring us yet.
Okay.
But this pillow is so good that I was traveling this past weekend for like a couple days and I actually took it with me. And I was walking to the hotel with this pillow and I felt a little funny, but I knew that it was worth it. But you guys aren't pillow travelers, right?
No, my mom.
I never was, but man, now I can't do without it.
I'm weird. I'm a disposable sheet traveler.
What do you mean? What's that mean?
Disposable sheets. You never heard of disposable sheets?
Oh,
Like bed sheets?
Yeah. So what? So
Did
what
you
it
use
is?
that when we went to sing? We said the Airbnb.
No. Those were regular sheets. We just bought regular sheets.
Oh, right. We all.
But,
yeah.
But there's a thing that I'm on now. Disposable sheets. So what it is? Think of like, hospital gowns.
Yeah.
Like that kind of material, and you take it and you put it over the hotel.
Oh, okay.
bed.
But how does that feel for you?
But you're underneath the sheets on the regular sheets.
No, you're in between.
So it's a layer between the sheets that are on the bed and you.
It's touching your skin?
It's the disposable sheets are touching your skin.
That doesn't feel weird, bro?
No, because you feel the comfort of the actual sheet.
But I'm feeling like like you know how a rain jacket feels when it's wet type of thing. I'm feeling like that.
Or when you go to the doctor and they roll out that sheet and then you sit on it while you're laying there.
No, it's not like that.
The material is what, plasticky or is it?
No, it's like
disposable.
It's like a. How can I describe this? It's like a.
That's interesting. I never heard.
I guess the best way to describe it is like a hospital gown. Like if you ever been in a hospital,
that's comfortable though.
Right? Exactly.
I mean, it's decent.
It's like it's a light.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. It's not
and
rough.
you throw it
it's
away.
not
You don't
coarse,
take it home to wash.
And then when you're done, you just ball it up, put it in the trash can, and you're out.
It's a fitted one.
So you
get fitted and then
you get a fitted, a sheet, and 2 pillowcases.
So that covers everything that touches you as this boat.
Exactly.
And you can bring your
that
own.
way, if you're concerned about, oh man, this hotel, did they really?
You use that at every hotel you stay at, or just like the one like the motels?
Do you bring a UV light thing?
No, I'm not.
I got a story for you guys after the podcast about some crazy stuff, motel stuff.
After the hotel.
Don't stay at motels, man.
Nah, it's all about hotels.
If the door doesn't open to a hallway, don't stay there. Don't stay there.
If I open the door to a parking lot, I'm good.
You should probably not stay.
Okay. I was like
a hallway, like inside.
I was like, you have to get through it. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, you feel me, right?
I feel it. I get you.
Because
unless you're like at a resort or something like that, that's like more condos or apartments stuff, whatever. But all right, off topic.
We started off on a quick tangent, but I mean, listen, real life is real life.
Real life is real life. So now you know if you want to take us out for one accord, hotel with now
breakfast.
Breakfast. We're adding a gym.
I guess we're gonna try.
And you got to get us some disposable.
There you go.
On top of the travel reimbursement, which is $1,000 per person.
You're high class, bro.
Hey man,
$1,000 per person. Well, that's awesome. Well, we got to address what we just experienced and lived through here in Florida. Thankfully, Idalia came and hit. Not thankfully for that. What I'm saying thankfully is that we were spared for a lot of time.
This time,
because it went to the Gulf. So our hearts are with all those over there by. The Tallahassee, Gainesville, even Tampa got a lot of flooding just because I was interesting to see just the as the model kept moving up, we were just everything was like on that top left corner, right? We were even everything right here, Orlando. It was just kind of like you would think it was just a big circle, but we didn't really get hit here as much.
Not much. But there was a lot of flooding along that whole coast, even down to where I used to live, Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda. There's a lot of stuff. My Facebook feed is just full of pictures of like flooding.
Yeah.
So prayers for those people. And that's that's like the Florida tax. You know what I mean? And I was talking to my dad earlier, and he was like, I don't know how many more years I want to go through like that stress, because it isn't the fact of getting hit. It's like the getting ready and the worry,
and then the worry that's like, all right, we made it this year, but this was 125, 150 years that they haven't gotten hit. Yeah, maybe 200. I don't know. Yeah. So it's nice, but you're getting flooded. What gets me is just how quickly things escalate, right? Yeah. So, Friday, I think they were like, oh, there's this. I think it was like Sunday. Monday was like, oh,
there's a storm coming.
And it's like, dude, in two days, in one day, you're going by stuff, putting up stuff on, and it's just like, you said, the Florida tax. You're like, is this the way of life that I want?
Every year? For the rest of my life? Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't matter where you live.
There's some
at least in the United States of America, there's something.
It's funny because
if you're up north, you're getting snow. If you're down here, you're getting hurricanes. You're in the Midwest, it's tornadoes. Yeah. You're out west.
It'd be fun to do a state ranking. Do like a draft, like a fantasy. We fantasy football.
Florida's not going to be towards the top.
But do we should do our own.
I like it here, but
we should bring a little. It might be aside from the podcast, a little state ranking, and then be like, what state we think would be top.
We should do it
because every state has its
exactly. If you're listening or watching and you want to influence our rankings, you can reach out to us.
Reach out, comment.
Let us know some positive things about your state. We can do that.
I like that.
You don't hear anything bad happening like in New Mexico, really, Arizona.
Yeah,
like those states,
it's
hot, but I mean,
it tires me. Oh, Arizona now is going on that. They had no
power.
No. It was heat. They were what's it called?
Drought.
It was drought, but no, they were just hot, like insanely hot for the whole month. Like they have a guy. I was listening to a podcast. They have a guy. I forget the word is, but he's tasked with the states or that count or that city there in Phoenix. He's the guy. He's like the cooling guy. That's tasked with how do you make Arizona cooler and make it so that this drought or this heat doesn't affect people and they're not hospitalized, because they had a lot of people that had heat exhaustion or just anything heat related like that were ended up in the hospital. So they've made all these cooling spots just because of the intense heat. They've just been in that heat wave for like over a month or so, which is crazy because here we're too much water, over there not enough. And so it's just so it'd be interesting to draft that
state ranking. We'll work on that.
Yeah, we'll do that. But yeah, so thankfully we're good with that. Going into the topic, I think it'd be cool to kind of continue on the conversation we had last week with Tom, right? Which again, great conversation. Tom, just a man of not a lot of words, but a lot of just very wise when he talks.
The people that don't say a lot are the ones that when they do speak, it's more effective because they're not saying a lot. So then you're like, oh, hold on, he's talking.
Yeah.
Hold on,
you got to take a moment to,
Then there's people like us that just talk too much, right?
Right.
So, but no, you're right.
Good. But we had a great conversation on, preparing a table and having a seat at the table for people and being able to dialogue and have those conversations, right? Your picture of God. So I think it's appropriate. We were talking about it right before we started recording of having that conversation, right? We're going into a time where it's been like this for the last, probably 8 years now. Is it 5 years, 2 election cycles where it's been crazy intense. Divisive, right? And
contentious
and everything, right? What was the things that we said are, back in the day you wouldn't talk about? It was politics and religion, right? Yeah. And now that's like, politics is in everything.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit. That was our final question last week. What's the place of faith, or is there place for politics in religion and faith? And but yeah, what do you guys think? We're going into this election season. We just started, I think, the Republican primaries. Now it's August 30th. Last week they had their first debate. There's a lot we can talk about, right? With different political candidates, right? Living in Florida as well. But it's
funny because you can have the best intentions. I'm very conscious when I'm talking to somebody about something that we might have differences of agreement with.
Right.
To just be open, at least to listen, and not to speak to create a disagreement or to argue, but just to kind of get some information. But it's funny because I work for myself, so I don't have anyone over me telling me like, hey, don't make sure. But I don't engage in political discussion with my patients. But now if they want to, I'll talk with them. But it's funny thing happened this week where, and the reason I'm saying this story is because even with the best intentions, things can go south very quickly. If the person you're dialoguing with is not thinking openly, then it can go south very quickly. I have this one patient, real quick, that he loves to talk about politics. And and he's very opinionated. And I'm working on I won't even say the body part just to make sure that there's no way in it. But I'm working on him and
your shoulder, huh?
Maybe. I'm doing my therapy with him, and he's always talking. I'm always like, yeah, I agree, right? But finally, I kind of said, well, hey, you know what? There's people who might have differences of opinion. Like it's not always it's not always black and white. Like. He was kind of saying that one particular party kind of has it all right and the other side is all wrong. And he was and I said, well, it's usually the mixture. It's somewhere in the middle, right? There's pros and cons to both sides. And he was like, no, there isn't, And so then all of a sudden, I'm like, well, no, there kind of is, right? And then all of a sudden,
now you're going back.
See, all of a sudden,
you're manipulating his.
There is. And he started getting really upset, right? And then I could feel like internally, I was starting to get a little bit upset at his lack of ability to reason that just because you have an opinion, it is still just your opinion, and we can disagree and still be cool. But he started getting more hype, and then I could feel myself starting getting more hype. And finally, I kind of I was like, listen, I got to the point, I was like, listen, I really don't care that much. He's like, well, then you should care because you're an American. All of a sudden, and then it went down that road. So he was looking, his particular life revolves around this. He's retired, and this is what he does. He's like we watch football, he watches politics.
Right.
Like he's into it to that level. That's his thing. So we finished the treatment, and I was kind of like, listen, man, like I wasn't looking for a fight, but I'm also not someone who's like trying to back down from. Right. I'm not gonna just be like, all right, whatever, like So anyway, long story short, he texted me later. He has my cell phone. He's like, I'm sorry. He was like, I won't talk about politics anymore. And I said, I wrote back. I said, listen, it's cool, man. I think we have to get to a place where we can have a discussion,
we can have a healthy discussion,
and really agree to disagree because we all have opinions. And then he came in the next visit, and it never came up, and we're fine. But I think what I think happened is he went home, told his wife, and she's like, "What are you doing?" because she knows how he gets.
Right.
So, but it's just one of those things. I think you can have all the intentions that I'm going to have a discussion with somebody about anything, religion, politics, and we're going to be cool. But something they can do can change how you behave, and all of a sudden you're arguing with somebody. You know what I mean?
That's good.
But that was just kind of an incident that happened this very week. Whew. That happened this very week. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
sure. What do you think? Any interactions like that?
I've had a few, not personal interact, but where I've observed some interactions.
Yeah.
Where someone will make a comment about something and somebody hears and says something back, and before you know it, now they're in a full blown argument.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, what are we arguing about? Like, you can have your, just like Omar said, you can have your differing opinions.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you're all right and they're all wrong, or vice versa.
Right.
Just agree to disagree. Say this is my take on it. This is from my perspective. This is what I think, and be open to hear what someone else has to say.
Yeah.
Right.
I find that when you go into a conversation with an open mind, when you're willing to hear somebody out, you'll pick something up. You'll hear something like, "Oh, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
That actually makes some sense."
Right.
You may not fully agree with the totality of their argument or their opinion, but you may take a piece of it and say, "You know what? That makes sense to me, and I can understand that. I can reason with that."
Why do you think people are so hesitant though to have that open mind when it comes to some stuff? Like, why do you think
we're indoctrinated?
I think indoctrinated is a nice way of saying it. I think we're poisoned. I think poisoned is a better word.
Poisoned, or deceived. But yeah, I think that indoctrination. The reason I say indoctrination, because it really is poison, deception, which I think is the tactics of the devil, right? But it's intentional, right? It's not like we're just talking and the more, every time we come to Crossroads, we're like, oh, the last 4 episodes we've been on this theme of having open conversations. Oh, okay. No, this is like, we're going into this and we're talking this and we're gonna put this element that this is the person that we got to vote for, or that's the political party, the other persons or other people. There is no right in them, right? Which I think has changed the dynamic, the conversation. Whereas
there's
before,
nothing good from the other party.
And I think that's why I was like, we don't talk about it because, hey, it's agree to disagree. Why disagree over the table, right? Hey, I remember, just having some, conversations before, and between my father-in-law and my dad, right? And my dad was a dentist, had his own practice, and so he was always Republican in the sense that, I was always that idea that Republicans have that.
More small business oriented.
Exactly. So, and it was like, they have some of the more conservative Christian values, right? From that from the idea. So he was like, I have a business and I need stuff that's going to help me.
Pro-business, right?
Pro-business, right? Where my father-in-law was coming from a different place where he was a teacher, and just different realities and different life things. And so I was like, that makes sense, right? Because you're voting Makes sense for what can benefit you based on what you're looking for, right? Whereas now you can't even have that conversation, right? Because not only is it, hey, you know, my name's Cheryl and I vote this way because I, you know, not only for myself, but my family, my community, this would benefit our community, right?
Yeah.
Now it's like, if you're a part of that, you're literally part of the devil's group, right? Or you're just the other side. And it's just crazy because you can't even have these conversations. Well, before you could get heated, like, well, we're pro-business. No, well, small government, big government, you know. Now it's like,
it's a lot more personal.
Yes,
that's it.
That's good.
That's it.
It used to be, like you said, you know, we're arguing about ideas or concepts. And so, you know,
it was like a piece of life.
Right.
It was a compartment.
Right. Now it's like, oh, you're Republican, you're evil. Or, oh, you're a Democrat, you belong to the devil. We cannot be
you didn't vote, you're the reason. Yeah.
Right.
And it's funny,
very personal.
People give off a certain vibe.
Yeah.
I had a patient last week that she's really cool.
Yeah.
And it was a very light political discussion because that's what's happening right now, right?
It's starting,
they had the debate the other night,
exactly.
and that's kind of the season that we're in. And she's like, "Do you know what I am?" I said, "Yeah, you're a Democrat." And she goes, "How do you know?" I'm like, "I just know."
You have a profile. Yeah.
Because we've talked, and I've known her. I've known her for a year now, like on and off. You can tell right away just based on little nuance where people are at. But it's just so funny because it does become part of like not
it's your identity now.
It's your identity. It's your identity.
It's like, hey, you can tell someone's from New York or from the South, from Florida, from California. Now you can tell who someone's voting for.
Yeah, after talking to them for a little while.
Yeah. And you know, especially if they're really into it, you know, and just the things they bring up, the conversation and the way they describe things, right?
Yeah.
So the way they talk about, you know, the border or the way they talk about the climate,
right? I
hate
electric vehicles. Yeah. Boom! I know. I know.
Dude,
listen, I have an electric vehicle.
Like,
I had a patient literally say like I hate this whole. They're pushing this electric vehicle agenda. And I was like, I wasn't gonna say anything, but I could just tell. All right, I know where he's coming from. Yeah. Like I know what side of the aisle because it's like you have these little catchphrases that people will use. That's like it just tells you exactly where they're at.
It makes sense because politics involves all of life, right? So it makes sense that you're going to be talking about school systems and education. You're going to talk about businesses. You're going to talk about you know, safety, the border, security, right? When you talk about police and how to. It makes sense because it's part of our everyday life.
Those are conversations that should happen.
That should be happening.
We should be talking about those things.
Yeah.
What happens though is it's interesting. I think is we never address it a lot locally, right? In the terms of who are we, our elected officials, right? But if we just take all these agendas that are being given to us, right? Well, we would say the mainstream media, whatever the
but there's a lot to that.
But there's a lot to that, right? Because it's just continually funneled, and you got to talk about Mark Zuckerberg's world of Facebook and targeting, So there's just a lot, but I think it's just trying to figure out what and I think this is the crossroad we're at, right?
Yeah.
We're here at this crossroad as people that of faith, primarily Seventh-day Adventists, and so how does that affect how I interact with politics? Because politics now, whether I like it or not, is a part of my life based on who I interact with at work, in my family, at the Thanksgiving table, whatever I see on the front, right? We try to be apolitical in the sense of we're not going to tell you who to vote for whenever I preach. I remember someone came, they kind of did like an interview of me, like, we want to know if this is the church that preaches the truth. And I was like, well,
what does that mean?
Yeah, I was like
the truth is
your
in
truth,
the word.
or like
listen
the
down.
Truth.
So because we left that other church because they're afraid to say the truth. I was like, all right, let's
get it
what
out.
is this?
Get it out.
Get it out. So he said, so what do you are you gonna from the front? Are you gonna denounce abortion and
homosexuality
and that? And I was like, okay, all right. So I was like, this might not be the church for you because you're not going to find, it's not my prerogative for me to tell you from the front. And I think that's what you're wanting, for me to tell you who to vote for and what to vote for, right? What I'm going to do is preach principles that I think can apply so that when you go voting, you can apply those principles.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
But then there's people that look for that. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. And we were cool. And I was like, hey, look, we might even disagree on some of the things right now and how we view it. We might agree at a core, but how we interpret and how we believe it should be applied is different.
Right.
So it's a funny conversation, but it's just everywhere. You can't hide from it.
Well, and it's a fine line to like how involved, that, and I guess to each his own, but how involved should we be as Christians, right? In the political affairs, I believe that this is a temporary stop. We've talked about this, Earth is a temporary stop. We have eternal glory ahead, but like how involved should Christians be? And I guess that's an individual decision, but what do you think as a group? Like, should we be like at the front lines of stuff, or should we kind of just be like, hey, listen, we'll vote, do our thing, and let things go? What do you think?
heard a sermon a few months back, and the topic of the sermon was based on the story of the Israelites and when they were taken captive, and how they were taken captive, and God told them, you will be freed, but you are going to be captives right now. But in the land that you're living in, be good citizens. Work hard.
Jeremiah 29.
Yeah, work hard.
Seek the betterment,
the prosperity of the country, because when the country prospers, you're going to prosper.
Yeah.
When things are going well for the country, things are going to go well for you. So, using that principle, like you were just talking about, I think we have a duty to be involved. We have a duty to be aware, be cognizant, and to apply biblical principles to every area of our life, including politics.
That's good.
Now, we have to make sure that we don't, in my opinion, we have to make sure that we don't take politics and have it supersede the Bible and have it become our religion, where everything we do centers around our politics and not around the principles of the Bible and God's character. And that it's very easy to get caught up in all of this craziness that's going on politically and get so caught up in it that you forget where your destination
That's
is.
good.
Like, this is not
you're
your
a
final
pilgrim.
home.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Right. You talked about that in your Hebrews class, right? Like that. I love that Hebrews 11 part where it talks about the people of faith, and the idea there is like there's a portion where Paul says, or the author of Hebrews, but we believe is Paul, where he's like, all these people waited in faith, and they lived as if they were pilgrims here, right, awaiting a promised land that's later, which is what you're saying, right? So I think that's the balance, right? That everyone kind of may go one way or another, saying, okay, I know I'm not. Maybe people don't realize that. Hey, I'm not destined to stay in this place forever. I'm just, like we said, extranjero, right? Like it's just a stranger, a pilgrim in this land. So that sometimes one extreme is saying, okay, I'm not going to involve myself in anything, and I'm going to run to the hills by myself and live by myself, be a community. I mean, like anti-community, right? Away from people, because I'm not from here. And the other extreme is like, I'm so into here that it's extremely, so I think it's finding that balance. I think there is a duty in saying, hey, I need to, like you said, right, I want to make the place I'm at a better place, with the background knowing that this is all going up in flames.
Exactly.
Right?
Do you think some people though use politics to weaponize their religion?
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Oh, yeah.
And that's I think where it becomes kind of dangerous. You know, is you hear about people that like trying to like. I think in respecting people that have faith, you need to respect people that don't have faith. Yeah. And not try to enforce things that would take away their choice. You know what I mean? So it just gets so gray and so hairy, because I don't like the idea of like enforcement of our principle on people that may not have faith. I think respecting both sides. I respect that you don't believe what I believe.
Your right to not believe in what I believe is my right to believe what I believe.
Exactly.
And that's the beauty of the faith that we subscribe to or ascribe to, is that the God we believe in is a God of choice. And so there is no you have to. It's I want you to. I would like you to.
I would love for you to choose out of your own will.
I would love for you to choose this. But if you choose not to, that's completely up to you. Just be aware that if you choose this, there are things that come with it.
Right.
And so I agree. I am not at all in favor of legislating faith and forcing people to believe a certain way or a certain thing. We all have choice. God has given us free will and choice to choose whatever we want to do. Just be aware that there are consequences or there are reactions to your actions.
Right. Yeah.
So if you choose not to serve God and you choose to do something else, that's up to you. Just understand what comes with that.
Right.
Yeah. That's legislative power or secular power, right? Or we would say the state power in the hands of the church always ends up in
bad
persecution.
Always.
It's always bad.
It's always bad.
It's never good.
It's never good. This is why when I think who is it that comes to God and says, "Hey, the people are crying out." Samuel, right? I think the people are crying out for a king because they want to be just like the other nations. He's like, you don't know what you're doing. And then Samuel's like, dude, because the prophets were the ones in between God, the mediators, right? Hey, I'm just saying what God told me. He's the leader. God's like, hey, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me, but they're gonna get what they're getting, which is they're gonna get a human that doesn't, looks the part, but they're gonna, and that's where you just see the cycle. And so it's just like, as long as we're in this world, even in the church, that if it's led by a human leader, right, which is a powerful thing, that Jesus is both God and human, but he's the perfect human, right? So I think it's, anytime the church has that state power and it has a ability to give out of authority, legislate these things, it always ends up wrong, which is interesting, right? It's like, how far are you willing to go to make the world how you want it to be, right? Which I think is kind of what we're called to do, right? Which is like, hey, we're called to spread God's love and try to make the world a better place. But I think it's just a means, right? We all have the same goal, which is I want the people around there. But how do we get there, right? Do we force it so that there's not an option B, C, and D, so that A is the only option, or do you do it through a different agency, which we believe is love, right?
Well, the best way to do it is to look at what Jesus did.
Right.
Jesus never said, "Hey, you're going to do this." He said, "Love me, serve me." But it's your choice.
And here's
And the rich young ruler, what do I have to do?
Yeah, that's good.
Sell all your things and follow me. Right. Oh, I can't do it.
All right.
Okay, that's fine.
And
like, I'm not gonna force you.
Yeah.
That's fine.
What do you guys think of the idea though too that and people always say like mainstream media, but there's money and there's everything in creating division, right? That's a big part of it. Like depending on, you tell me the channel you watch, I'll tell you probably who you vote for. Right?
100%.
So it's, I mean, like, what do you guys think of that? Like, it's just so crazy. Like for example, like we'll even talk about. I was watching the other day. I was watching this thing on Instagram, and this guy was commenting on it. He was a black guy, and he said the person that he was commenting on was another black person. They were saying, "Hey, tell white people to stop attacking us or stop abusing us." And the guy who was commentating was like, "Listen, I don't know about y'all, but like my white neighbors invite me over for barbecue, and like we go swimming, our kids play together, and we're cool." Like, it's almost like there's a constant like undertow of like, oh no, it's us against them. But when it comes down to it, the majority of people that are probably listening to this aren't experiencing that. And if you spread that out, sometimes you can kind of create a bigger issue than it is. And I know there's pockets of these kinds of issues, but it seems like the media likes to push it like this is the norm and this is how it is everywhere, and that's not true, right? That's not my experience, and that's not a lot of people's experience. So how do we? I guess it's good to be aware of it and see it, because you see it like so often. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. What do you guys think of that? Like,
I mean, division is a tool of the devil, right?
Yeah.
And so, if you go back, look at the Bible, the story of Adam and Eve. The goal was to create division between the human race and God. Put a wedge
between
in
each other too,
and between each other
instantly
division. God is a God of connection. That's what we go back to season 1. We had the conversation about community and togetherness. That's how God functions. He wants everyone to be a united body. He calls his followers the body of Christ. You can't have a well functioning body if it's all divided. So that division is a tool of the devil, and
it's messed up, man.
It's messed up
everywhere, bro.
But what it does is it like you said, it allows people that want power or have power to more easily control everyone underneath them, because there's so much division. So if everyone is united moving one way, and you want them to move a different way, it's gonna be very hard to get that group to move. But if you got these small little pockets, because everyone is divided, it's much easier to say, all right, let me get this pocket over here, and then let me get them over here, and then let me get them over. It's much easier. And so that's from my vantage point. That's where you get. That's why you have a lot of division, because it's easier to control the masses. If they're divided.
What's happened when they talk about like slavery in the South, right? They had, they would always pit the slaves versus the low-income white people, and say the reason that you're in the position that you're in, especially for white people, to say it's the black people, right? Even after they were emancipated, it's like it's black. And so there's this, but it wasn't them. It was this system that was set that the rich were getting richer, right? And those that had these huge plantations or whatever it was, right? And so it was just, if we can keep them fighting between themselves and not focus on the big money makers or the big move makers, then we're good, right? They're fighting, we're good, So. But I think one of the key principles, and I love it that we're throwing a bunch of principles out. It was one, especially when I took about, at post September 11, you had a lot of like anti-Arab, anti-Islam, anti-Muslim sentiment, right? Anybody with a hijab that you saw, anybody that had a long beard, anybody that showed up to the airport, and you would see them if they come into the air, even to this day, someone comes into the airplane, and you're like.
It's like a bias, man. It's like an underlying bias that you don't even have a name for.
Why is it? It's because, hey, you had a couple of dudes or, a whole system, right? And we're not, it's bad. It's bad. And, brought a whole war.
But for
crazy.
a few people that made decisions,
but the way it was portrayed, right? Yeah. Which is true. We were very, it was a horrible day, horrible moment. A lot of people died. It was traumatic in New York City, But what came from that, the narrative was that this, whether they said it or not, and they probably never voiced that thought that all Arab people are suicide bombers or all Arab and Muslims want to give them, but the idea was planted that if you see someone like that, they fit this stereotype.
It's an underlying bias.
And the only way to do it is it takes work for you, right? And I think that's where the Bible comes in. You have to like sit back and be like, is this true? And another thing is, going to last episode, sit at the table, right? So I was able to go. Chantal spent 9 months in Turkey. I went to visit her a couple of weeks. I also went to Morocco. Oh, wow. And we stayed at I stayed, with my friend there for 2 weeks in Morocco, stayed at a hostel. And, you're around people that are, from Morocco, right? And you're just like, the news, but they're people like me.
Right.
I'm walking around the square there. They're playing music. It sounds Mexican. They had guitars out there, the rhythm. I'm like, I can see how we're actually like probably cousins because you guys like spice, we like spice. So it's like, I think it's once you say, all right, maybe I'm wrong, right? And like you said, we talked about this a little bit earlier, right? We believe we're wrong in our beliefs, right? Because we do this also in the religious sense. But coming to the point with the humility to say, hey, maybe what I've been told about people that look different or talk different or are from different places, maybe I'm wrong. Let me sit at the table. And that's how I usually try to go to that conversation, back to what you said, right? Everyone's persecuting me. I was like, wait, before I even try to say, hey, I'm a white passing Latino. I'm not, we're cool. Before that, like, tell me your experience.
Right.
What are you talking about?
It is individual.
Right.
There are
people
for them,
it may be that, hey, I lived in a place where, every police officer is white and we all get stripped, not stripped, but we all get searched. We all get stopped. And so it's like, oh, that's a reality for you, right? And so I think that's where the first step is having that conversation, which most people don't want to have.
Right.
Like we said last time, you want to, so it's having a seat at the table to be able to start that conversation.
And this is not a new problem. Like this is not something that is new to humans in 2023. Right. That was happening back in
everywhere.
You look in Acts and Peter. And
with the Gentiles,
he's like, oh, can't touch it. Oh, no way.
The reason we got deacons in the Bible is because they're like, they're serving all the Jewish women, but not the Greek women. Yeah. What's going on? They're not certain. It's like, all right, let's put deacons because we're preaching. We got to go plant churches. You guys are in charge, making sure everyone gets cared for.
Yeah.
When people come back from Babylon, right? They come back from Babylon. The people of Israel, Samaritans are there, which was a mixture of those that stayed and other people that were brought there. And then to that day, later on, Jesus talks to the Samaritan woman, right? Or the parable of the good. So there's like this
us against them
has been there since Adam and Eve. Adam's like the woman you gave me.
It's her
he
fault.
Turned on her quick too. Man.
Oh man,
he turned on her mad quick. Yeah. He went from like, I'll die for you and just do what I know I shouldn't be doing.
Literally, that's what he did.
That's what I mean.
I'll die for you.
I'll die for you until like, nah, like the woman you put here, she did this to me. It's crazy how fast that happens, bro.
Like this, yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy, but I think a lot of good principles that teach us how to interact. So, what would be one principle I think that you guys take or would say would be good as we start wrapping up in having these conversations, especially in this political season? Maybe someone's listening. Hey, I'm tired of. I can't even get on Facebook anymore. My coworker's driving me nuts. We have a friend, a good friend that his job, he just hates going to work because every conversation in the truck, in the work is gonna be, hey, did you hear about this? And they're pro one side, so they're very big on these political. So it's just like, everything. What would be one principle that you think people can take home to, especially now as we're entering into the season?
I think the one thing I would say is try to keep your own personal bias under control.
Okay.
And just kind of just like seek to understand.
I like that.
I think just seek to understand, and even if I'm not gonna agree, let me at least understand where this person's coming from. Like this gentleman I spoke about earlier, I can understand some of the frustrations he has. They're valid, right? So I think to seek to understand, even though if you're not going to agree, you may not agree. Just kind of seek to understand, and then be aware of your own biases because we all have them.
Right.
Yeah.
You might see somebody or whatever, and you might think, boom. Really be aware of that and check your biases. Be like, listen, that's not right. I shouldn't be thinking that.
Seek to understand.
I
love that. I love it.
So seek to understand. I think is probably a big one, and just check your biases because we all have them.
I like that. I like that.
I think mine kind of ties into yours, OG. I would say speak less, listen more.
Yeah.
Just because you listen doesn't mean you have to agree.
Yeah.
But hear what someone else has to say. Hear their point of view because they may have some experiences, some life experiences that have led them to think or believe the way that they think or believe. You would never get to know that if you just start an argument with them and you start going back and forth. Just sit there and hear them out, hear what they have to say. You might find that there's a nugget of truth or goodness in all of the other muck that they may be telling you. But you won't know unless you listen.
Yeah. That's good. I think, I'm on the same thing. I would say just literally invite someone over for lunch or for dinner. Or, hey, can I sit for... I'm curious, I listen to this news channel. They say that people that look like you, Ashero, X, Y, Z. What do you think? And we have to understand that I think a lot of times we don't like to be grouped into our whole group and say, oh, I'm not like your typical... X, right? Yeah,
right.
But we do that to other people, like, Cheryl and Omar, they have to be like, So it's just like, hey, 1-to-1, I'm gonna understand that. I want to see things differently. It might, and it might, what you say, what you share about your life experiences may affirm some things I believe, or really clash with what I believe to be right. And that's when you go home and you say, God, where is it? Exactly. But understanding each person you talk to has a unique experience, right?
It's a lens. Everyone sees things through their own lens, what their experiences are like that lead them, like you said, to that moment when you meet with that person.
Yeah, that's good. So having the moment to sit down, talk, and share. And I'm in the political season, right? If you're watching, listening, talk to, hey, so you're voting this. Tell me more. What are you passionate about?
And most people are open. They'll say, well, I'm voting for this because of X, Y, and Z.
And I think what we'll figure out is that at the core, for example, the gun, or that might, maybe border security, right?
Right.
At the core, we all want security.
We all want protection.
Yeah. We all want protection. It's just how we go about it, right? And so, and then are we being, whatever, right? We can get, but it's just like, we all at the core want the same stuff.
Right.
But we're all doing it differently. Same thing with the gun debate, right? So one side says we want more gun laws because we want to be safe. Well, the other one say, well, we need more guns so we can be safe.
Right.
It's the same core thing, right? We both want safety. And that's where we can agree, because at the core we want the same thing. It's just like understanding. Okay, you just are trying to do it just like parenting. You're trying to do it a different way, but the core is we want our kids to come up and be good. So
something else hit me when you were talking. Find ways to agree.
Oh,
like I feel like a lot of times we're finding ways to disagree, finding ways to start an argument. Find a way to agree with somebody.
And you can when you do that, you can quickly de-escalate stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you can be like, oh yeah, I agree with that. Find one or two things that you agree with, and that quickly kind of brings you at least into some kind of like common ground where we don't agree on everything, but there are things that we do agree on, and you can quickly kind of de-escalate stuff.
And then they're more willing to listen to you because we have something in common. So
what, you're not that bad.
Right. What else do you have to say?
Yeah.
So just find a way to agree with somebody, even if it's something small. You know what? You said that you like living here. I like living here too.
That's it.
Even there you go. That's a start.
Right.
Start with that.
Right.
And I think, be curious. Right. Ask those questions. So
good stuff.
Very good. All right. Moving to our talking point. Think of a difficult time in your life. Did you feel closer to or further away from God? Why might that be? So, difficult time in life. Did you feel closer or further away from God? What might that be? Talking point for the night.
I can go first. So, difficult time in my life. I would say
we didn't cover this one, right? We had one that was similar to.
It was similar.
Sort of similar.
It was similar, but
yeah. Feel closer or further away from God?
I would say 10 years ago now, 2013. I hated my job. I didn't know what I wanted to do career-wise. I just felt like I was in a rut. I didn't know where to go, what to do. That whole year was just a very rough year. And I think what made it worse was that 2012 was like a high point kind of year for me. So it was like I went from like a mountaintop like all the way down to the bottom of the valley. I think in certain ways I feel like I got closer to God because I was going through so much stuff. I was like, hey God, like I need some help, like help me out with this. But I feel like in other ways I got a little further from God, just in the sense that some of the things that I would always do, kind of like my faith habits, if you will. I was like, yeah, it's I'm doing these things, and here I am. So I'm not doing these things anymore.
Right.
So I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if you know if you get what I'm saying. But like in certain ways, I got closer because I was, I guess, trying something different and pleading with God.
Mm-hmm.
But in other ways, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore because it's clearly not working for me.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I would say probably the 2020, man, which was difficult for a lot of people, man. There was just a lot of transition that year, you know, and we moved. That's when we moved to Palm Coast, and just getting here in new town and the work situation and figuring out what I was going to do. And you know, there was a death in our family not too long after that. And it was just it was a rough, like a year and a half or so. But I think in hindsight, and this is where I would say I felt like I was closer to God, is I kind of was able to look back and see all the moves that God was making. That in the moment I wasn't really noticing. I was just thinking like, okay, things were just happening. And then when you look back and you see how everything kind of fell into place, you're like, wow, okay, you had me. And I think the result of it, on the other side of it, there was a closeness that would have otherwise not been achieved had those things not happened.
That's good.
You know what I mean? So it's crazy because when you look back at some of the stuff, the tough things in your life, I think in hindsight is when you really kind of get to appreciate the moves that God was making. Because in the moment, man, it's like you're just like, man, shoot, like what's going to happen right now? You know?
I can resonate with that.
So you know, I think it's important to think back on your life and think about those hard times and then how you are now or where you are now. And if you're in a hard time right now, just know that on the other side of it, you'll be able to see the working of God that you might not otherwise feel. So I would say I was closer after the fact than I was before the fact.
Yeah.
You know?
That's good. That's good. Yeah, man. I don't know. There's a couple that came up. I think the one is like last year, like when we were doing the interim senior pastor for that time. You know, our church was kind of healing and going through its process there, and stepping into that role and questioning. Like, man, I had a conversation with someone else that had ended up moving to a different type of work outside of, you know, pastoral ministry, and it was that conversation. Like, man, is this if this is what the top feels like? I don't know if I want this type of thing, right? And it was just a lot going on. And then, you know, as time, that's why I think it took a lot of like, all right, God, you know, let's pray about it. What's the vision, right? What type of ministry do you want me to be in? And just feeling, okay, one of the cool things that I took from that season there, which was like almost a year ago, August, September, we did a couple trips, went to Yosemite and then Peru, and just a time of prayer and just like, what are we doing, God? You know, are we trying to stay with youth ministry? Are we moving into that senior role, which is, you know, it's a whole other beast. But, and it was just this reminder that God was like, wherever it is, you know, you can have your plans, your bosses can have their plans, your church can have their plans, but I have so many options for you, right? So looking at the grand scheme of things, I was like, man, there's many ministry opportunities that come in all types of, you know, shapes and sizes that all over the world that you're like, oh, that's exciting. Like if there's something here that's not cool, that I'm like, I'm not feeling it. God's like, we have a lot of doors that can open up.
Right.
So it's just that excitement where it's like, it's a difficult time where you're like, but it was just like, nothing really changed. It was just kind of the mindset that I'm like, oh, I can do this. I can handle this. And then it's like, but God can have amazing plans. And that's it got me excited to be able to just keep going. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the future holds, but you know, it could be, who knows what it is. Right. And that's like, I think a lot of it is looking backwards to see how God led you here. You're like, yeah,
got nothing to worry about.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Well, great talking points, great conversations. Hope that you enjoyed it. If you're watching on YouTube, comment below what your thoughts are about the state rankings and maybe some of the principles that you apply when you talk to people that maybe think differently or do differently. And remember to subscribe wherever you're watching from. Like the podcast. Share it with anybody you think is needed. Maybe to that crazy uncle, be like, hey, you got to listen to the Crossroads. Like, man, you guys are crazy
too. Yeah.
The Thanksgiving meals can be tough. But yeah, great conversation. Thanks, ACOG. And what was my name? CeeLo. It was Pilo.
Pilo. Man, it's not we got to use it more because it obviously wasn't taste.
Pilo kind of sounds Filipino, though.
I mean, the Filipino food.
Don't talk about that Filipino. Man, that Filipino food, man.
Hope you all have a wonderful time whenever you're listening to this or watching this, and we'll catch you on the other episode.
Peace. See you later.